Eleanor had lived most of her life alone in a small house at the edge of the village. Years of hardship had left their marks on her face, and loneliness had become a familiar companion. Despite the silence of her days, Eleanor possessed a quiet strength, a resilience, born from enduring life's struggles. One chilly morning, a tiny gray cat appeared at her doorstep. Its eyes carried a deep, silent sadness. Without hesitation, Eleanor welcomed the cat into her home and named her Twinkle. From that day forward, Twinkle became Eleanor's constant companion, curling up in her lap, following her around the house, and bringing warmth to the empty rooms. Eleanor's days slowly transformed around Twinkle's presence. Caring for the cat, feeding her, stroking her fur, and speaking softly to her brought a sense of purpose. Even small moments like watching the sunset together filled Eleanor's heart with unexpected joy. She realized that companionship, even from the smallest creatures, could alleviate loneliness and create meaningful connections. Months passed, and Eleanor and Twinkle's bond grew stronger. But one evening, Twinkle fell ill. She moved slowly, refused to eat, and often hid in dark corners. Eleanor's heart sank. The thought of losing Twinkle, her only companion, filled her with fear and helplessness. Determined to save her friend, Eleanor took Twinkle to the village vet. The diagnosis was serious, and Eleanor faced long nights of care, giving medicine, preparing special meals, and comforting Twinkle with gentle words. In tending to Twinkle, Eleanor confronted her own vulnerabilities and rediscovered her inner resilience. She realized that love was not about grand gestures, but about presence, patience, and dedication, even in the smallest acts. Slowly, Twinkle regained strength. The day she purred in Eleanor's lap again, Eleanor felt a wave of relief and gratitude. Their bond had grown even stronger, proving that mutual care and devotion could heal both the giver and receiver. With Twinkle's recovery, Eleanor's house felt alive again. The quiet days were now filled with soft purrs, gentle movements, and shared warmth. Eleanor began venturing outside, walking through the village with Twinkle in her arms. She greeted neighbors, shared smiles, and discovered new ways to connect with the world around her. Eleanor reflected on her life and realized that Twinkle had taught her the true meaning of companionship. Love and devotion were not limited by age, circumstance, or even species. They could bloom in the simplest forms. Together, Eleanor and Twinkle found joy, hope, and purpose, proving that even in solitude, the heart could feel full. Their days passed in quiet harmony, each one a reminder that the smallest bonds could bring profound happiness. Eleanor and Twinkle's story became a timeless example of how love, care, and companionship could transform life, filling even the loneliest hearts with warmth and light. As the seasons changed, Eleanor and Twinkle's bond grew deeper. Spring brought blooming flowers and soft sunlight, which Eleanor and Twinkle enjoyed from the window. Twinkle would chase rays of light across the floor, while Eleanor sipped her tea, feeling a warmth in her heart she hadn't known in years. The village slowly noticed Eleanor's transformation. The quiet woman who once kept to herself now smiled more, greeted neighbors warmly, and shared small stories of her life. Twinkle often accompanied her, a small gray shadow following Eleanor everywhere. Children in the village adored watching the cat's playful antics, and adults admired the gentle love between the elderly woman and her pet. One summer evening, a storm hit the village. Rain poured heavily, and wind shook Eleanor's small house. Twinkle, frightened by the thunder, hid under a chair. Eleanor held her close, whispering softly to calm her fears. In that moment, Eleanor realized the depth of their connection. It wasn't just about companionship. It was about protection, comfort, and unconditional love. Through the long nights and sunny days, Eleanor began to understand life in a new way. The little moments with Twinkle, the shared meals, the quiet purring, the simple presence, were more meaningful than any grand experiences she had sought in her youth. Twinkle had become a mirror to Eleanor's heart, reflecting patience, loyalty, and love without expectation. Even the challenges like illness or fear became opportunities for growth. Eleanor's care for Twinkle strengthened her own resilience, teaching her that life's difficulties could be softened with compassion and dedication. And Twinkle, in return, offered Eleanor a sense of purpose, a reason to greet each day with hope and tenderness. By the time autumn arrived, Eleanor's house was filled with small joys. Leaves drifted past the window, and Twinkle played among them, occasionally leaping into Eleanor's lap. Their days flowed in quiet harmony, each one a testament to the healing power of companionship. Eleanor often whispered to Twinkle, "You've made my life brighter, little one," and in response, Twinkle purred softly, as if understanding every word. Eleanor now walked through her days with renewed confidence, knowing that even in the simplest routines, love could create profound meaning. She had learned that life's greatest treasures were not material wealth or recognition, but the presence of a loyal friend who could share in every joy and sorrow. Together, Eleanor and Twinkle had turned solitude into warmth, fear into comfort, and ordinary days into treasured memories. Their journey was a quiet, gentle reminder that love could blossom in the unlikeliest places, and that a bond formed in kindness and care could change a life forever. Winter arrived with its biting winds and long nights. Eleanor, now growing frailer with age, often sat by the fire with Twinkle curled up in her lap. The cat's warmth against her hands reminded her of the comfort she had once longed for. Twinkle was no longer just a companion, she was family, a part of Eleanor's very soul. On quiet evenings, Eleanor would reflect on her life. She remembered the hardships of her youth, the years of loneliness, and the emptiness that had weighed on her heart. Yet she no longer felt regret. Twinkle had transformed her final years into something meaningful. "You've given me more joy than I ever dreamed of," she whispered to the little cat stroking her fur. Twinkle responded with a soft purr, as if assuring Eleanor that the feeling was mutual. As time passed, Eleanor began to tire more easily. Her steps slowed and her hands trembled. But Twinkle never left her side. The villagers often saw the two together, Eleanor wrapped in a shawl and Twinkle sitting proudly in her arms. People admired the quiet strength and love between them, often saying, "That cat has given her a second life." One frosty morning, Eleanor didn't rise as early as usual. She sat quietly in her chair, watching the pale sun filter through the window. Twinkle rested in her lap, purring softly, unaware of the heaviness in Eleanor's breath. Eleanor smiled faintly, her hand resting on Twinkle's back. With her final breath, she whispered, "Thank you, little one, for walking this path with me." When the villagers found Eleanor later that day, she was still sitting peacefully in her chair. Twinkle curled protectively against her. It was as if they had both promised to stay together until the very end. The villagers, deeply moved, took Twinkle in and cared for her. They often spoke of Eleanor's story, telling their children about the bond between the lonely woman and her beloved cat. Twinkle lived on, carrying with her the memory of Eleanor's love, becoming a gentle reminder to everyone in the village of the healing power of companionship. Eleanor's house, once filled with silence, became a place of stories and remembrance. For those who knew her, Eleanor's life was no longer defined by solitude but by the love she had shared in her final years. Her legacy was not written in wealth or achievements, but in the simple truth that even the smallest acts of kindness and care could light up the darkest of lives. And so Eleanor and Twinkle's story lived on, passed from one generation to another. It was a story of love, resilience, and the enduring beauty of companionship, a reminder that no heart is ever truly alone when touched by unwavering friendship and care. After Eleanor's passing, the small house on the edge of the village remained quiet, but Twinkle continued to live there with the villagers who had taken her in. The little cat would often sit by the window, gazing at the garden where Eleanor once tended flowers, as if remembering every touch and gentle word. Twinkle became a living memory of Eleanor's love. The villagers, especially the children, would visit her daily, learning about the bond she shared with Eleanor. They were told stories of how Eleanor had cared for Twinkle during illness, how she had turned loneliness into warmth, and how even small acts of kindness could transform lives. Each story left a deep impression, inspiring them to be more compassionate and aware of the creatures and people around them. Even the seasons seemed to honor Eleanor's memory. Spring brought blooming flowers to the garden, reminiscent of the joy Eleanor had felt while watching Twinkle play among them. Summer brought warm sunlight streaming through the windows, and Twinkle would bask in the light, her fur glistening as she remembered the afternoon spent curling up in Eleanor's lap. Autumn leaves drifted past the window, reminding the villagers of the cycles of life, love, and care. Twinkle herself grew older, yet she retained the gentle, loving personality Eleanor had cherished. She greeted new visitors with calm curiosity and often nestled with children, just as she had with Eleanor. Through her presence, Eleanor's spirit seemed to linger, offering lessons of love, patience, and devotion to anyone who cared to notice. The villagers eventually placed a small plaque on Eleanor's house, commemorating her life and her unique bond with Twinkle. It read, "In memory of Eleanor, whose love taught us that companionship and care can light the darkest hearts." Visitors would pause, reflecting on the quiet yet powerful story of a woman and her cat, realizing that sometimes the greatest legacies are written not in books, but in the hearts we touch. Twinkle lived out her days, surrounded by the warmth and care of those who had learned from Eleanor's life. And when Twinkle finally passed, the village mourned, not just for the little cat, but for the enduring love she represented. Eleanor and Twinkle's story had transcended their time together, becoming a timeless lesson that love, kindness, and devotion can echo far beyond a single life, inspiring countless hearts to open, care, and cherish. In every corner of the village, children would retell the tale of Eleanor and Twinkle, the lonely woman and her small gray cat, who together transformed isolation into joy, sorrow into hope, and simple days into a legacy of love. Their story remained a gentle reminder that no heart is ever truly alone when touched by unwavering friendship and care. Twinkle's presence in the village continued to inspire. Children would sit by the little cat and listen to stories of Eleanor's life, absorbing the lessons of love, patience, and resilience. Eleanor's hardships and Twinkle's loyalty became a blueprint for understanding kindness in its simplest form. Many villagers reflected on their own lives, realizing how often they overlooked small gestures of care. Eleanor's story reminded them that even quiet acts, feeding a stray, comforting a lonely neighbor, or showing gentle patience could ripple through the lives of others in ways they might never fully see. Twinkle, now older, embodied these lessons, her calm demeanor and affectionate presence teaching empathy without words. One young girl named Clara became particularly inspired. She had often been shy and withdrawn, but after spending time with Twinkle and learning about Eleanor, she began helping neighbors, caring for stray animals, and finding her own quiet courage. Eleanor's story, through the little gray cat, had created a chain of kindness that stretched far beyond the house at the edge of the village. Eleanor's old home, once silent, became a symbol. People visited to see where the magic of their bond had begun, and many left with a renewed sense of compassion and understanding. They realized that love was not always loud or grand. It could be quiet, consistent, and simple, like the soft purr of a cat, the gentle touch of a hand, or the warm presence of someone who simply cared. Twinkle's life also continued to teach the villagers about loyalty. Even in her old age, she would curl up near anyone who needed comfort, offering her silent support. People came to understand that devotion and care were not limited by species. Even a small creature could impact a life as profoundly as another human being. Through these small acts of love and reflection, Eleanor's legacy grew. Her life, intertwined with Twinkle's, became a story told from one generation to the next, reminding everyone that moments of compassion could create ripples across years, inspiring countless hearts. And in quiet corners of the village, on sunny afternoons and chilly nights alike, Twinkle's gentle purring could still be heard. It was more than the sound of a cat. It was the echo of a woman's love, the reminder that even in the simplest companionship, life could be transformed. The story of Eleanor and Twinkle proved that the heart's capacity for love, care, and devotion is limitless. From loneliness to joy, from despair to hope, they had shown that even the smallest acts could illuminate life's darkest corners. Their bond became a lasting testament to the power of friendship, patience, and enduring love. Years passed and Twinkle grew older, her fur turning slightly silver with age. Yet her gentle eyes and loving heart never changed. The villagers continued to care for her, but in every quiet moment, Twinkle seemed to remember Eleanor, the warmth, the gentle voice, and the love that had shaped her life. Twinkle often sat by the window, gazing at the garden Eleanor had tended so lovingly. She would sometimes pause, ears perked, as if listening for Eleanor's soft footsteps. To those who watched, it was as if the cat carried Eleanor's spirit within her, a living memory of devotion and love. One quiet evening, a gentle rain began to fall. Twinkle curled up in her favorite spot, gazing at the raindrops, and slowly closed her eyes. It was a peaceful moment, a quiet reflection of a life filled with love and companionship. The villagers, who had come to cherish both Eleanor and Twinkle, knew that this was a final, serene chapter in their story together. The village children, now grown, often retold the tale of Eleanor and Twinkle. They spoke of how a lonely woman and a small, gray cat had transformed each other's lives, and how their bond had touched an entire community. Eleanor's wisdom, reflected through her care for Twinkle, had created ripples of kindness that would continue for generations. Even long after Twinkle's passing, Eleanor's story remained alive in the village. Parents told their children about the quiet strength of love, about the courage it takes to care for others, and about the lasting impact of friendship, even between humans and animals. Eleanor and Twinkle had become symbols of hope, patience, and the transformative power of devotion. Their legacy was simple but profound. Love does not need grand gestures. It thrives in small, consistent acts of care. A soft purr, a gentle hand, a quiet presence. All of these could heal hearts, inspire others, and create meaning in lives that might otherwise feel empty. Eleanor and Twinkle had turned solitude into companionship, sorrow into comfort, and ordinary days into extraordinary memories. Their story reminded everyone that life's most enduring treasures are not material possessions, but the love and bonds we share. And so, even as the seasons passed and new generations grew up in the village, the tale of Eleanor and Twinkle lived on. Two souls connected by love had proven that friendship, care, and devotion could transcend time, leaving an everlasting imprint on the hearts of all who believed in the quiet magic of love. Theirs was a bond that no one would ever forget, a heartwarming story of resilience, companionship, and the extraordinary power of a small cat and the woman who loved her.